What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Matticus Vlogs. If you are new to visiting the channel, then I'd like to take the time to wish you the warmest of welcomes and hope that it's the first of many visits that you make. If you are a returning subscriber, then what can I say? You guys are just awesome. As most of you guys know, I've been on a 6-week placement at St Mary's Hospital on the Isle of Wight. I've been working on the branch of physiotherapy known as respiratory or cardiovascular respiratory, CVR. I've been staying in some nice accommodation. It's called Sovereign. Most of the staff that don't live on the Isle or are not from the Isle originally actually go and stay there. The accommodation's actually quite nice. The room is really nice. The kitchen is quite big, it's just the fridge space is a little bit limited. You get car parking as well. Another thing to add is that the university paid for my accommodation up front, so I haven't had to pay for the accommodation, which is good. Anyway, today I want to talk a little bit about my placement, the things that I got up to, the things that I've learned. Mostly I've been based on ITU, which is the intensive care unit. Throughout weeks 1 to 4, I was actually based on more of a surgical rotation, so I would see patients who'd had an laparotomy or hysterectomy or like some sort of operation. Most of what I did was seeing patients, introducing myself, saying who I was. You know, I'm Matticus, or I'd say Matt because like that's more professional. Most of it would consist of listening to their chest if they needed to have their chest assessed. So you do an A to E assessment, and then I'd also get them moving. So if they wanted to get up, you know, they have to give consent. So they'd get up and we'd walk around the ward, and getting the patients mobile is probably one of the most important things, as I've said. Also getting them to do like active bed exercises, so like just straight leg raises, knee bends, knee extensions, and toes up and toes down, and just keep moving. When I was in ITU, it was a little bit different because some of the patients were intubated and sedated, so they'd be on like some sort of oxygen therapy anyway. So in that sense, there wasn't that much you could do as a physio except for like suctioning, which is where you put a tube down someone's airways and just like kind of make them cough and then suck up all the sputum, which is absolutely delightful. On ITU, it would just be listening to their chest, potentially performing suction and monitoring their obs, their vitals. If they were awake, then you'd be able to do some active bed exercises with them, some active cycle breathing techniques, so deep breaths or deep breathing exercises to increase the thoracic volume and help the patient breathe, which is quite important. And if they were able to, we would get them out of their bed and get them walking, because that is key for everything. You just get the patient up and mobile. So the first few weeks were mainly me sort of getting my bearings on things. So week 1 was pretty much almost an induction and writing some notes. And week 2 and 3 were sort of starting to see patients by myself. And week 4 was pretty much seeing patients completely independently and like clinically reasoning why I should see a patient and what treatments I do and formulating a plan. So like analysing my findings, whatever I found, and coming up with like a treatment plan for the issues that the patient had. So if they were short of breath or if they had some sputum retention, then I'd get them to do the active cycle or breathing technique. So deep breaths to increase lung volume and the huffing to help clear the secretions. I got to look at some chest x-rays as well of some of the patients that I was seeing. So that was good because it meant that I could see that if, for instance, if there was a lot of white on the chest x-ray, it could just be that the x-ray was underexposed, but more often than not, there would be some sort of consolidation in the patient's lungs, so you could like clinically reason this patient has some consolidation in the lungs, they need some chest physio for this. And the first 3 weeks initially were supposed to be spent on more surgical rotations, obviously, so ITU and then surgical, so seeing people who've had an operation. But actually I ended up staying an extra week on the surgical rotation, and only in the 5th week of my placement did I start seeing more like medical patients. So I was on a ward called Colwell Ward and on MAU and A&E, and that was really good because I got to see kind of how important the physiotherapist's role is, not just in rehab and seeing patients that have had operations, but also in patients who have literally, so for instance, like collapsed from an exacerbation of asthma. As the weeks went on, I was given more and more independence to see the patients, which is really cool, which is really good. I spent a lot of time sort of refining my assessment skills, so the A to E assessment of a patient, and actually ended up doing 2 full A to E assessments on 2 different patients. So one in I think the first week or the second week, which was really slow and really awkward because I kind of didn't know kind of what to do, and I was just like, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that and I need to check the blood pressure, and it was all over the place. And then by the 4th or 5th week when I had to do another A2 assessment, it was really like boom, bang on. So that shows progress, which is kind of good. The physio that I'd be with in the afternoon occasionally would teach me more about analysis, and he'd be like, your assessment's okay, you know, it's good, it's pretty solid. Now you need to start thinking about your analysis, so look at your findings, what have you found, what do you think the issue is, clinically reason it, and come up with a plan, and because the analysis ultimately feeds into a plan for treatment, and that's kind of the most important thing. So there'd be times when I'd see a patient and I'd auscultate their chest, which is where you use the stethoscope and you listen to their chest, and their chest would be clear, so then I'd just be like, well, chest is clear, no concerns, the physio input. And there are times when you have to take a step back and be like, actually, it's probably better for us not to do anything with the patient and just let them kind of, if they're unconscious, for example, to let them fight off the infection for a little bit. You know, if they need some suctioning, fine, keep monitoring their vitals, but actually they don't need any chest physio until they've woken up. So sometimes it's best to leave things as opposed to trying to force some sort of therapy that they might not really need. And plus there's not really much you can do with a patient when they're unconscious anyway. I've actually just finished week 5 of my placement and I'm going to week 6. This video has been made in advance. So I actually had my halfway 2 weeks ago and I passed my halfway. I got like pretty decent marks in my halfway, and I'm pretty confident that I'm going to pass this full way, and I've improved upon the things that I needed to improve upon, so I should aim high and get pretty high marks, even though placement for whatever reason for us MSc physios doesn't really count, so it's a pass or fail. By the time you've seen this video, I would have finished my placement and would be close to starting my second placement, which is at Southampton General Hospital, working on the cancer care unit. That is what I have been doing on the Isle of Wight at St Mary's, just learning to be a really good physiotherapist in acute care. So I've talked a little bit about what I did, and now I want to talk about what I've liked about being on the Isle of Wight on placement. The first thing is, it's quite a nice getaway from Southampton. The Isle of Wight is quite quiet, and it's a really nice place to go like when you're old and you're retired and you want to live in like a bungalow overlooking the sea. Like that's definitely something, I'll note that. The Isle of Wight is also a bit warmer than the mainland. I've really liked living on site on the hospital because it's meant that I have not had to wake up as early as I would have to do. It's meant that I've not had to wake up as early to commute to like Andover or Portsmouth, where there's like a 45-minute to 1 hour drive or whatnot. It's literally a 2 or 3 minute walk from my accommodation. So I've not been late a single day. And that just shows you that actually, most of the time, I leave in good time, and the only reason I'm late is because of rush hour and traffic. Not an excuse, it's just a reason. I found that the people on the isle are actually really quite relaxed and down to earth and they're all lovely people. And everything is really close together. Like the gym I go to is literally like a 5-minute drive from where I am. There is still traffic on the isle, which does give me a bit of road rage, but it's less so than other places. I've really enjoyed working at the hospital. I think it's a lovely little hospital. I say little, it's still a big hospital, but compared to something like Southampton General, it is pretty small. I felt that St Mary's is quite like relaxed in terms of they're not so high-paced and stressed out all the time. And this has been good because it's meant that I've been in an environment where I feel comfortable to learn. Like it's a great learning environment. I've been comfortable to make mistakes because ultimately that's how I learn. I make mistakes and I learn from them. I've been very hands-on with some of the patients and that's been really good for me. Like I've not had to sit and watch and shadow because I kind of find shadowing a bit boring. Like I like to kind of watch to see what I need to do and then get straight into it, get stuck in and start seeing patients and start clicking into this physio mode. Also, all the staff that I've worked with, especially the physio team that I've been on, have all been like really, really kind and really welcoming and really inviting. These are people that I can see myself like working with in the future if I did decide to work on the Isle of Wight. There's a really supportive atmosphere where everyone's kind of got each other's backs. The one thing I've noticed about physio on the Isle at St Mary's is they are like quite understaffed and they have loads of wards to cover and loads of people to see, so many patients to see. Yet, even when a lot of people were sick from the flu, I got sick from the flu, so I was off for like 2 days, But even when they were even more short-staffed than usual because people were ill or people on annual leave, the physios were still able to plan things and see all the patients by, like, prioritize things. And it was really, really good to see that they're making the most of what they had. And yeah, I just thought it was really quite impressive. Like, they didn't even have the most staff or the best resources, but they were just like, right, we're going to give the patients the best care we can. And it's nice to take a step back from the busyness and all the stress of things on the mainland. I want to talk about some of the things that could have been better on the Isle of Wight. There's not really that much more that I could have asked for placement-wise. The staff room that we always had lunch in was really cramped and it was really warm. And there were just too many people for a room that was really small. They might need a bigger staff room, especially since they're starting to hire more staff as well. So the only other thing that I can complain about is that in the first week, I did actually write to their occupational health. Like, I've made it clear that I have a skin condition. I have pompholyx eczema. I'm allergic to sodium lauryl sulfate in soap, which is the stuff that makes soap bubbly. I let these people know that I had this allergy and I'm like, do you get some special soap for me? And they hadn't done anything about it. So that's been really irritating. So my hands have been blistering and cracking. I've tried to not use too much soap. So I've tried to only wash when I've needed to wash and instead using more hand gel, which doesn't appear to dry out my hands as much, strangely enough. In terms of some of the disadvantages of life on the Isle, at the moment, I don't know if I could live on the Isle permanently. The reason for that is there's not really that much to do, in the sense that they don't have a Nando's on the Isle, they don't have a Wagamama's, they don't have loads of major shopping outlets, and they only have 2 cinemas, and they have a trampoline park. But in winter, there's not really that much to do. And that's one thing I've noticed. If it was summer, I could go to the beach every day and I'm sorted. I'd absolutely love that. Go swimming or doing flips and parkour outside and just being outside in the sun, on the sand. That's just absolutely what a dream. But in winter it's just so cold and rainy and horrible and there's not really much you can do. Even though it's really nice to have that space, that kind of getaway, that stepping back from everything going on the mainland, it's really weird not having my mates around the corner. You're on the Isle pretty much by yourself, and obviously I have made some new friends and the people I live with are nice, the people I work with are nice, and I do have friends on the Isle that I've been going to dinner with on some of the weekends and just having a great time with because they're just lovely, like-minded people, and I'm going to miss them very much. For the stage that I am in my life at the moment, I feel like the Isle of Wight, if I lived there, I think I'd get quite bored. I want to talk a little bit about what I've actually learned. I really enjoy what I'm doing. For me to take a step back and be like, actually, what I've got here, even though some other things in my life might not have lined up properly or might be a little bit not where I want them to be. Actually, I'm so blessed already. I get to be a physiotherapist. I'm in 1 year's time, I'm going to be qualified, I'm going to be looking for a job, I'm going to be doing what I've been called to do. After doing this cardiovascular respiratory placement, I've learnt that actually this is quite interesting as well, and there's a lot more to it than I thought, and it's not just patients coughing up phlegm, which is not really that pleasant to deal with. But you get used to it, you're wearing gloves and you got your apron on and stuff, so you don't necessarily have to touch the phlegm, it's fine, just don't touch it. I have also learned that there are times when my really laid back, kind of soft approach is not enough for a patient. If we need to mobilise them in their best interest because they've been lying in bed for 5 days, there is consent obviously because the patient needs to consent to it, but if they're either not in a fit state to consent or you know that it's going to cause them a lot of harm in the long run, you have to see them in their best interest, and sometimes you have to kind of really persist or even kind of force them to get up. So we had a lady, I'm not going to use her name for anonymity, but this lady, let's just call her Mrs. X. Mrs. X had been lying in bed. She's a lovely lady. I think she had dementia and she might have had a urinary tract infection. She had not been up in days. She'd been lying in bed, and every day we'd go to see her. I think this was week 3 or week 4 of my placement. We'd go and see her and we'd try and get her up. We'd be like, Mrs. X, it would be so good for you to get up, and she'd kind of beat around the bush and not want to get up. And if you were over 80 and you lie in bed for 10 days or something, it's equivalent to 10 years loss of muscle. I remember just going to this lady. I was very pleasant towards her. She was I've absolutely adored this lady, and she was never horrible to me. Apparently she was a bit mean to some of the nurses. But I remember asking her, I was like, Mrs. X, I think we should get you up, yada, yada, yada. She kind of beat around the bush. So I was like, right, I'm not going to be able to get her up. So I said to her, okay, Mrs. X, well, we'll leave you for now. And then I guarantee you at some point, we're going to get you up out of bed. She just turns to me with her glasses on and she just goes, listen, you old bugger. How many times do I have to tell you I'm not getting out of bed? I wasn't expecting that. And no one's ever called me bugger before. So my supervisor had to come and be like, right, sorry, you need to get up. And we did manage to get her up eventually, which was really good. And she sat out in the chair and we got her back to bed. And we got her like transferring and mobilizing with a lot of assistance, but it was really good to just get her out of bed. On a more serious note, I've had to deal with the very real facing of death. There was this patient, this lovely man, who I started seeing with one of the Band 5 physios. On the first week I saw him, on the second week, and even after that Band 5 physio, who was also a lovely girl, she actually left to do a different rotation. So I was still seeing that man with another physio, and then I got to the point where I was seeing him like independently to do some band exercises. So I got to know him quite well, and he had a family. He passed away very recently. Only this last week, my supervisor told me, oh, this patient, he passed away. I was like, wait, what? It was quite unexpected. I know he was very sick, and he was like, it was palliative care that he was having. It hits you hard when someone you've known for a little while, you've got to know quite well, relatively, as with a patient and therapist relationship. When they pass away, you're just like, I don't know, I'm finding it really hard to express what I felt, really. When I spoke to my supervisor, she was like, actually, you don't need to see this patient. There are other patients that you could also see. It wouldn't take that long to see him, but I actually kind of enjoyed going to see him, and just to know that in some way I was making his life a little bit better by just choosing to go and see him and get him to do these like shoulder exercises, and he was really compliant. He really enjoyed doing them. We had some good chats, and I hope wherever he is now, I hope that he is resting in peace. I know death happens. I know people die. I know it's just something you have to get used to. I know like if I was a doctor or medical student, this would be something that I have to deal with even more. But even as a physio student, and in the future when I'm a physio, I know if I work in acute care especially, there are going to be people who I meet and who I really start to care about, and they just die. I have enjoyed my placement on St Mary's. I feel like it's a very relaxed, very chilled out environment. I've been very hands-on with some of the patients. I've had a lot of independence, a lot of support, but also a lot of independence from the staff that I've been working with, and they're all lovely people. It's just been a great learning environment. This has been my favourite placement so far, and I think one of the reasons for that is not necessarily because CVR is my favourite out of the 3 disciplines, but because of the staff, you know, the people there, because of how much I've been able to do, less stress from not having to commute, which has been great. And also the Isle is just a lovely place to be. It's a bit boring, but I made some good friends, and I know that when summer comes, I will have people to go and see, and now that I know the Isle a little bit better, I'll be like, yes, let's go to the beach on the Isle of Wight. Because in Southampton we don't have any beaches, even though we're by the sea, which is really quite depressing. Physio students, nursing students, healthcare professional students, take the opportunity to ask questions, to learn, to just grow, because that's honestly what placement is for, is to learn. I do want to wrap up this video here, but before I go, there is something I like to share. Now this verse is from Luke chapter 13, verses 22 to 24, and it reads, Then Jesus went through the towns and villages, teaching as he made his way to Jerusalem. Someone asked him, Lord, are only a few people going to be saved? He said to them, Make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Now, I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then please give this video a like, as it really does help the channel out. Don't forget to check out Health Jobs if you are a physio looking for work, and if you would like to see more videos like this and follow me on my journey to becoming a physiotherapist, then why not consider subscribing by clicking on the subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys very soon.